Thank you for joining us for Building Safety Month. My name is Betty Lee. I'm from the Department of Building Inspection. And also we have here Kate Connor from San Francisco Planning Department. We're here today to present to you on building additional units on your property. So our agenda here will be talking about where new units can be added and the requirements for our ADU program, permit process, and then a few of our frequently asked questions. So we'll be taking comments and questions from the audience at the end of our presentation. Without further ado, I'll have Kate start. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Betty, and welcome. My name is Kate Connor, and I am with the Planning Department. And welcome to this presentation on accessory dwelling units. So to start off, let's talk about what an accessory dwelling unit is. An accessory dwelling unit is commonly referred to as a granny unit, a secondary unit, a Fonzie flat, but typically a residential unit is a unit that's being added to an existing residential building. So accessory dwelling units, or ADUs as we call them, are commonly located on the ground floor of existing residential buildings, either behind the garage or in storage spaces or in that soft story. These images are from a resource that the Planning Department recently published that is supposed to help building owners kind of envision where an accessory dwelling unit can be added. This is the actual publication. It's our accessory dwelling unit manual, and we have a couple of copies up here for the public after the presentation if you want them. We also have some available at our Planning Information Center, and it's also available online. So where can ADUs be added? There are two kind of different buckets. There have been a number of legislative efforts since about 2014 that have enabled the production of accessory dwelling units. The first was a change to the planning code that stated that the creation of a new dwelling unit, as long as it's within the existing building envelope, no longer requires neighborhood notification. And so this was a very big change. So then, in addition, 3 different programs are currently in place that allow for accessory dwelling units to be provided within existing buildings when they don't meet all the planning requirements. So for accessory dwelling units that meet all the planning code requirements, those can be approved over the counter, and you have to meet all the density controls. But then we also have these 3 separate programs that allow you to deviate from planning code requirements. So let's first kind of take a look at that first bucket for the accessory dwelling units that meet all the different planning code requirements. These accessory dwelling units must be located completely within the building envelope and must meet all planning code requirements for rear yard, exposure, open space, and density. If it's within that existing building envelope, no neighborhood notification is required. However, if you wanted to also propose a horizontal addition to accommodate that unit, you would have to go through neighborhood notification. So now for the new programs. So we have currently 3 active accessory dwelling unit programs. We have one for seismic retrofit. So if you're going to be adding an accessory dwelling unit in association with a seismic retrofit project, that's one program. And then we have 2 additional programs that are geographically based. One that's in Supervisory District 3 and one that is in Supervisory District 8. The very first accessory dwelling unit program that came online was actually the Castro pilot program, but that was somewhat dissolved when the District 8 program came online. So the process for permitting these accessory dwelling units that are taking advantage of these programs, either seismic, D3 or D8, is different than the over-the-counter process. The zoning administrator must waive certain planning code requirements, and so it is something that cannot be done over the counter. So all of these permits are routed to planning staff for review. In addition, there's a requirement for these accessory dwelling units that if the building that they're going to be located in is subject to rent control, then the new accessory dwelling units will also be subject to rent control. And there's an agreement that the project sponsor will have to enter into with the city, and so that needs to be kind of documented and then also recorded. The first step would be filling out a screening form. And so DBI has this screening form, and DBI will help determine whether you are eligible to enter into these programs. Either they have to be geographically located in District 3 or District 8, or you have to be performing some sort of seismic work. And DBI can help you determine whether that seismic work qualifies. After planning completes our review, then the permit is routed to DBI and fire for their review. So to kind of summarize the specific controls for these accessory dwelling units, these accessory dwelling units must be built within the existing building envelope. They cannot take space from an existing dwelling unit. They have to either be constructed within a garage or within a storage area, but they can't take an already existing unit space. The number of ADUs actually varies by program. There's different thresholds in District 3 versus District 8 versus seismic, and I'll go over those in a second. Also, accessory dwelling units can receive waivers from planning code requirements, but they do need to meet all of the building and fire codes. So this slide illustrates the fact that an ADU cannot expand beyond the existing building envelope with one exception. If the ADU is associated with a seismic retrofit project, the building can be lifted up to 3 feet to accommodate a head height or ceiling height for that ground floor. So this is kind of a summary of the number of ADUs and where they are permitted by program. So for the seismic retrofit program, you can have an unlimited number of ADUs that you can propose. However, you cannot utilize this program in an RH1 or an RH1D zoning district. So that's our single family zones. District 3 has no limit on the number of ADUs that can be added, but only in larger buildings. So if the building already has more than 4 units, then you can have an unlimited number of ADUs. However, if it's a smaller building with less than 4 units, then you are limited to 1 ADU. District 8 is probably the most restrictive. In buildings with 10 units or less, you can add 1 accessory dwelling unit. But if you have more than 10 units in the building, then you can have up to 2. Neither District 3 or District 8 programs are available in the RH1D district, but you can utilize them in the RH1 district. The RH1D district, there are very few of them kind of within the city, but it's our single family detached, where RH1 is just our single family zones. So what planning code requirements can we waive? So the zoning administrator may waive density, parking, open space, and rear yard requirements. In addition, he can partially waive or reduce the exposure requirement. So a typical dwelling unit must face either a street or a code-complying rear yard. And for those of you that are not familiar with the exposure term, it's basically a unit's access to light and air. So for the accessory dwelling units, we've reduced this requirement so that a unit must face a 15 by 15 foot area. So think of it as an unobstructed volume of space to be able to get adequate access to light and air. So the important thing about these waivers is that they are administrative. It's nothing that you have to apply for. We handle it all internally. And planners will continue to make sure that these permits still meet other relevant planning code requirements. So landscaping, permeability, bike parking, and preservation standards are still something we're going to be reviewing. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Betty to review some of the building code requirements.
So along with planning code requirements, the addition of dwelling unit must also meet San Francisco Building Code and Fire Code. And it must also meet Title 24 California Energy Code. And please refer to information sheet G23 because that information sheet has more information regarding the applicable codes requirements for adding a dwelling unit. So, and then in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about a few of our frequently asked questions. So one question we get is, how does DBI and fire determine code equivalency? So through a pre-application meeting, DBI and fire shall determine whether building code equivalencies are applicable to any code issues related to unit addition. And you can schedule this pre-application meeting at a DBI on the second floor. And a very good information sheet that we've created is information sheet number FS05, and this addresses the code equivalency for fire sprinkler requirements. And as always, we have Technical Service Division. They are a very helpful resource if you have any code questions or interpretation, and they are located in 1660 Mission Street, first floor, counter number 4. So a scenario that may come up is that, say for instance, you have a 4-unit building and you've completed the voluntary soft story for AB 094, which makes you eligible to add 1 more unit, and this will make you a 5-unit building. Now, this will trigger you into the mandatory soft story program. So how we are handling this is that you can come to our counter in counter number 8 at DBI, and then you have to submit a screening form to be exempt from the soft story program because you've already completed the soft story work under the voluntary criteria. Now, what if you want to do a full seismic retrofit and add a unit? So to do this, you would need to file some separate permits. So there'll be 1 permit for the soft story retrofit, 1 permit for the remaining seismic work, and then another permit for the ADU. And now we're requiring so many different separate permits is because the cost of the ADU work cannot be passed through to the tenants. Therefore, whereas mandatory soft story work can be, so that's why we need to separate the permits. Now, once your ADU is approved and you want to add water, electrical, or gas meters, this will require you to have a separate address. So you can apply for a separate address. And to do so, after your permit is issued, please request for an appointment by emailing waifong.chung@sfgov.org. And then a very common question we get is, will my building get reassessed? Most likely, yes. But because the assessed value increase, therefore your property tax will be raised as well. So it's best to contact the assessor recorder office to get your answer, and their phone number is 415-554-5596, or you can also go to their website at sfassessor.org. And just to recap the ADU program, it is applicable citywide for buildings undergoing mandatory or voluntary retrofit. It is also applicable for buildings located in Supervisor 3 District and Supervisor District 8. So then as you also have to remember that ADUs cannot be constructed within the building. Oh, apologies. Construction of ADUs must be within the building envelope, and it shall not be constructed using space from existing dwelling units. So 2 separate permits will be required, 1 for soft story and 1 for ADU. And screening form will be required, and screening form can be found in our information sheet G23. Here's the page of resources. You can always find us at 1660 Mission Street, first floor, counter number 8. For any questions you have, our phone number is 415-558-6117. You can email us at softstory@sfgov.org or find us on our website at sfdbi.org/unit edition. And any planning questions, you can find them on first floor at the Planning Information Center, and their phone number is 415-558-6377. You can email them at pic@sfgov.org, and their website for regarding ADUs is at sf-planning.org/ADU. We're now open for questions from the public.
I have a 5-unit building with one car garage on the front and a separate rear building with 2 dilapidated garage spaces. Can I turn those 2 spaces accessible off an alley into a unit? And we're also doing a mandatory seismic upgrade. So can I take away those 2 parking places?
Yeah, so for the planning code requirements, we are waiving the parking requirement, and so you can utilize existing parking spaces on the property for the construction of accessory dwelling units. There are a couple things we'd want to check. One, we'd want to make sure that that rear building in the back was actually a legal structure. And so you can kind of determine that by looking at DBI records, or we'd want to make sure that it's a legal non-conforming structure, meaning it kind of predated when our code went into effect. But yes, that would be eligible to, you could definitely put accessory dwelling units or apply to do so there.
It's also completely in the required rear yard. Does that?
That's totally fine. So we waive the rear yard requirements as well. And it's for these kinds of structures that are located in the required rear yard.
And if you go from 1 unit to 2 unit, is there no rent control on either unit or not?
So not the same scenario for a single family scenario?
Yeah, for single family 1
Correct.
to 2.
So if it's a single family dwelling, that's not subject to rent control, so a new accessory dwelling unit would not be subject to rent control in that scenario. However, in an apartment building that was constructed prior to 1979 that would be subject to rent control, then the new accessory dwelling unit would be subject to rent control.
Hi, thank you. We're doing a voluntary seismic upgrade. It's a 3-story structure. It has 1 unit on the 3rd floor, and the ground floor and the 2nd floor are commercial. So you pointed out that the additional unit could only be constructed within the envelope, but in this case, you know, we have a very large backyard, and it does have a shed in the backyard. Could that be converted and then another possibly new ground floor be added as a unit?
So you're asking whether you could convert kind of an existing auxiliary structure in the back to a unit, and then
add
also the commercial space, or would you maintain the commercial?
Maintain the commercial and add on in the backyard a new structure, single story.
So for the accessory dwelling unit programs that we just talked about, it has to be within the existing building envelope as it's existed for a period of 3 years.
Okay.
So to be able to receive those waivers from planning code requirements, it would have to meet that definition. There may be a possibility, if you're not at your density maximum, where you could do an addition to accommodate another unit. And there is a possibility of being able to convert some of the commercial spaces to an accessory dwelling unit, but you'd have to check the planning code regulations to make sure that there's not a required commercial frontage. In some of our neighborhood commercial districts, it's required that you maintain it as commercial, but that might be another option. But in terms of the auxiliary structure, it's kind of the same as the last question. We'd want to confirm that it's actually a legal structure. And then that would be something that would be possible to convert to an accessory dwelling unit if you're taking advantage of one of the programs.
We have a question about, we're working on apartment buildings that have like larger, like 20 units. And so the accessory dwelling allows you to add 1 additional unit into the building without the structural upgrade. Is there any plans to allow you to like add more than 1, like 2 units into a ground floor of a existing building without going through the other programs, basically.
So let me see if I'm understanding. So you have a 20-unit apartment building? So would you be going through seismic upgrade or?
Yeah, so currently our plan is to go through a seismic upgrade and then add units on the ground floor. But we're working on several buildings, and for some of them, they just would like to add like 2 units. So we were wondering if there's any plans to like expand that additional 1 unit without having the seismic upgrade in the future, basically.
Yeah, so for the seismic upgrade right now, it's an unlimited number of units that you can add. It's not limited to just 1. So if you're going through the mandatory seismic upgrade, you can add an unlimited number of units, provided that it meets the planning code requirements, because we do have that reduced exposure requirement. So you'd want to make sure that those units are either facing a 15 by 15 foot open area, a street, or a complying rear yard. But you would be able to add more than 1 unit currently.
When you want to add a unit and then you mentioned about the screening process, right? With the screening process, you will be able to define that you can really add that unit in your property, correct? Now, when you go a building, that will be another like pre-application, correct? So with the, let's say during the screening process, is like totally defined that, like if you pass the screening process, then it means that you can really add another unit, right?
I think the screening form is really to determine your eligibility to enter into the program. I mean, we've had some proposals that have come in to add numerous accessory dwelling units, but maybe they don't meet that exposure requirement, and they've had to reduce the number of units that they're attempting to add. So I think really the screening form is to determine your eligibility. Either geographically you're located in District 3 or 8, or the work that you have associated with it actually qualifies as mandatory seismic retrofit or the voluntary seismic retrofit.
Right, so we can take the screening process as a save time before going to building department, right?
Correct. I mean, you can go through the screening process before going to building department. But then you can also do the pre-application meeting with building inspection staff, kind of figure out what equivalencies may be available and what the building code requirements are. And we'd always recommend kind of doing that. I think right here.
Just a kind of a small question on the exposure rule. For, let's say, a 2-bedroom unit, if the living room in one of the bedrooms faces a 15 or by 15 or greater space, but the second bedroom faces a much smaller area, does that still qualify?
That'll still qualify. The exposure requirement, you only have to have 1 room that's going to be habitable, so either a bedroom or a living room, would be able to be a kitchen or a bathroom, that is at least 120 square feet in size, so it can't be like a 70 square foot bedroom. And then the windows actually have to meet the housing code regulations in terms of their size to allow the appropriate amount of light. But if you only have 1 bedroom that's meeting that, the whole unit would still meet the exposure requirement.
There was something in the presentation that was a little confusing to me. We're thinking of a project where basically we'd want to do an extension for the ADU or whatever the unit we add. But my question is, though, it sounded like planning allows for that, but you were just, DBI was describing, you were describing something where it stays within the building envelope, but doesn't take away from the existing unit space, which made sense to me. But if we extend it for the ADU, that's adding. So I'm trying to understand the difference.
Yeah, for the ADU programs that we just described, they have to be within the existing building envelope as it's existed for a period of 3 years.
Sure,
So if
okay.
you were proposing an addition, you would not be able to locate the accessory dwelling unit in
Oh,
that
I
area.
see. So it stays within the
Yeah.
building envelope. So any extension you do in a building be part of.
You'd
the
have to
other
go through,
units or
yeah,
something?
it would have to go through neighborhood notification, and then would also have to meet density requirements and all the planning code requirements. We would treat it as a unit. Whereas with the accessory dwelling unit programs that we were just describing, if they're within the existing building envelope, then you are eligible to receive these waivers from planning code requirements, and so you would not have to go through notice. You could get rear yard and open space and these requirements waived. So once you
Okay.
kind of get into that addition, you lose that ADU status per these programs.
Okay, so that's, okay, got it.
Any more questions? Oh, okay.
Well, I have a question regarding the illegal unit complaints, because I work for housing, and I have a question all the time that the customer come in that they have a complaint for illegal units, and then the illegal unit actually the height is not up to the code, and how can they do to legalize that?
So we have a legalization program that's completely separate than these accessory dwelling unit programs. And it's kind of like an amnesty program to bring illegal. So for the planning code, there's a whole bunch of other waivers, very similar to these: open space, parking, rear yard, et cetera. But no health and safety or life safety codes from DBI are being waived, aside from some of the equivalencies. So the legalization process is also a screening form. It's something that you can kind of enter into anonymously. The screening form for the legalization process is much more lengthy. It's like 25 pages. It goes through every single code requirement that you could ever imagine that you would need to meet. And then you can kind of determine when you're filling out that screening form, is this going to be financially viable for me to continue? And if so, if it is something that you want to continue with, then you can file your permit. So it's an anonymous program.
Yeah, that follows another question is that we have customers say, I don't have, my financial support is not allow me to legalize the complaint that it's on the property. Can they still not legal, well, I mean, can they remove the illegal unit in that point, or?
So I don't want to get too much off topic from the accessory dwelling units, but currently right now it requires conditional use authorization to remove an unauthorized dwelling unit. We'd really recommend that you would legalize that unit. That being said, if there isn't an actual path to legalization, then that's something that we can kind of discuss further.
Yeah, actually you can get more information. You can get more information on information sheet G17, downloadable from a website, or just go downstairs to the window 8 and we can give you a copy. You got all the screening process in there. Okay.
So I think legalization adds rent control and prohibits condoization.
Correct.
Can I use the ADU to legalize an illegal unit and avoid condo conversion restrictions and rent control if I don't have an NOV, or if I have an NOV?
Correct. So if you are going, you can utilize the accessory dwelling unit program to legalize an unauthorized dwelling unit. And yes, you're right with those distinctions. For the legalization program, the unit has to be a rental unit. It has to be under rent control. If the building's under rent control. The ADU program is similar in terms of rent control. If the building's subject to rent control, then the new ADU will be subject to rent control. But yes, you are correct. There's no prohibition on going through separate, ownership, TIC, or condo with the ADU program.
But if there is one there, you're not really adding one. Is that okay? There's a
We would
kid-
consider you to be adding one. So you'd have one, let's say you have one legal unit on record and you're going to be adding another one, even though it may already be existing there. On the building permit application, you're going to see a unit count change from 1 to 2.
But I thought I needed a CU for removing an illegal unit. So am I removing this? If there is a second illegal unit and I convert it to legal using ADU, can I avoid a CU?
Oh, yeah. So, right. So I was like, no. So if you're trying to legalize a unit, I mean, that's what we're really hoping for you to do, is to be able to retain that housing unit. And so whether you choose the legalization process or whether you choose the ADU process, the conversion of an unauthorized dwelling unit to an accessory dwelling unit or to a legal unit does not qualify as removal. So yes, you would not have to go through the conditional use for that.
You said, somebody else said, you can raise 3 feet up house. Instead of raising up, can you go down?
Yes, you can go
Yes,
down.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing I would probably add about going down is in terms of our CEQA review for any sort of environmental impacts, we want to make sure you're not going too far down. There are archaeologically sensitive, yeah, so there's archaeologically sensitive areas. So if you're going to be digging way down, then it might be something that triggers additional environmental review. So more than 8 feet if it's not in an archaeologically sensitive area, or in an archaeologically sensitive area, more than 2 feet.
And most likely, it won't be economically feasible to go down there, but because it's very, very expensive to underpin
Yeah.
all the neighbors.
Yeah, also true.
I guess this is just a follow-up question to similar for the legalization units, the non-soft story. Right now, like for if you do the soft story upgrade, you said you can add however many units per code. But if to legalize an existing unit, right now we're having issues where you're only allowed to legalize 1 unit instead of
correct.
say 2,
Mhm.
even though if there's 2 existing, so then you're only allowed to legalize 1.
Correct. So the legalization program is limited in the number of units you can legalize, and it is only 1 unit across the board,
Why is that?
citywide. It was just kind of what was considered in the legislation, so it's just what the rule is at this point. I think there has been some discussion about potentially amending it, but then you can also use the legalization program in concert with one of these accessory dwelling unit programs.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple of permits that have done that, where it's like a D3 property and they're adding 1 ADU and then they're legalizing 1 unit. So they're using 2 different programs
Okay.
together. So that might
Okay.
be an option.
Okay, thank you.
I'll stop after this, but I heard raising a building even 1 inch is now going to be considered a demolition, and you have to get a demolition permit. Is that true in process, or just an unfortunate rumor?
That I'd probably have to look a little bit further into. I mean, I think there's a lot of different qualifiers for what's considered to be a demolition. I'd probably have to follow up and get back to you on that.
Maybe wrong, but it's not a demolition.
Yeah.
It's not a demolition. I'm a contractor.
Yeah, I'm a contractor too, but I just heard it on
Oh, yeah?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's basically you need seismic upgrade of the whole building because it's considered vertical addition.
Oh, even, seismic up, not that
So
floor
you
down?
move, if you raise the whole building up 1 feet or 3 feet or 2 feet or even 6 inches is considered vertical addition. So you need seismic upgrade the whole building. That's what you need. So.
Yeah, this is more of a general question. It says just, it's District 3 and District 8. Is there what's the chance of other districts going to be involved in this?
Pretty good chance. There's been legislation that has been introduced for a citywide program,
Okay.
which would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 program instead of all these different levers. But right now it's in the very, very early stages of the legislative process. But yes, the short answer, yeah, they're looking at doing something citywide and trying to kind of combine, all of the different programs into one.
And obviously you can't give a timeline. I was hoping to hear something like in a year or 2 or something like that.
I would say that it would probably be in some sort of hearing format within a year or 2. I can definitely follow up with you as far as what the projected schedule is for going to, the land use committee and board, but.
Now, and this is this is kind of indirect tied to what I saw in the District 3 and 8, the matrix up there. But it looked like there was an RH1 allowed in District 3, right?
Correct.
So that's the only place where RH1's allowed basically for that kind of for ADUs.
Also District 8. So District 3
Oh,
and District
okay.
8, the only place that's restricted is the RH1D.
Okay.
Seismic is restricted in RH1D and RH1.
Okay, but so I would imagine then if it goes to other districts, then RH1 would be allowed in those districts as well. Because
As far as like contemplating a citywide program?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I would imagine, yes.
Okay.
I would think that it would either kind of follow either the District 3 or District 8 model. I mean, it's hard to kind of predict, but
Okay.
I would anticipate that.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Why specifically those districts? What's the reason for choosing those districts as opposed to some other district?
I mean, I think the supervisors of those districts were interested in these programs. You know, this is a huge change from where we were 7 years ago, just even being able to imagine doing this. And so the first program was a Castro pilot program, which was a very, very kind of limited geographic area around the Castro neighborhood. And then other supervisors kind of caught on to this, and some were very supportive of an ADU program. But it's being able to kind of get that political will to do something citywide that I don't know was necessarily secured at the time that these programs went into place. But I mean, they're all being pretty popular, so I mean, hopefully we'll have something that's citywide.
You go from a single family eventually to adding an ADU, you go into a rent control situation most of the time, right?
So how the planning code addresses the rent control situation is that we only subject the accessory dwelling units that are being proposed to rent control if the existing building is subject to rent control. So for a single family home, if it's not subject to rent control, then the additional dwelling unit, the ADU, would not be subject to rent control. Anything else? All right, well, thank you, everyone. We have a couple copies of the manual up here, if anybody would like to grab one.